Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Pave the Way Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck. Today, I'm here with Gabe Garcia, who is a good buddy of mine down in the Miami area. And today, we're going to do this a little bit differently. It's going to be more of an open conversation. I'm going to ask Gabe a couple questions just to kind of about what he's got going on right now with his successful business down in Miami. And then Gabe's going to pretty much interview me. So he's got some questions he's going to ask me. It's going to be very open. It's going to be more of just a casual conversation. So figured we'd record this because we were going to just catch up on a phone call, and I figured we'd do a podcast episode. So Gabe, man, how you doing down in Miami?
Doing great, man.
Good to hear from you. So let's just kind of get this kicked off. So would you mind telling a little bit of the listeners kind of your background, what you're doing right now, and how you got started?
Yeah. Well, I run a wholesale business down in South Florida, a seven-figure wholesale business. I got started it's a long story, but to make a long story short, I left. I was trying to make my career within the music industry, and I realized that wasn't going to create the lifestyle I wanted for myself. So I stopped doing that, and I read the Robert Kiyosaki books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Cash Flow Quadrant, and all those books that he had. That led me to, the seminars, and the seminars like blew my mind. And then from there, that's when I learned about wholesaling. And I figured like the whole paradigm shift happened for me with the Kiyosaki books, like with the letting money work for you and buying assets to support your life or whatever.
Sure.
So once I learned that, and then I figured, well, I was working a job at the time at Humana. I was making like $30K a year, just like a very entry-level job. So I was like, it's going to take me a long-ass time making $30K a year to buy these properties,
Yeah, totally, dude.
So then I learned about wholesaling. And once I learned about wholesaling, I'm like, hey, this is perfect, because now this is going to show me what a good rental property is to buy. And at the same time, it's going to speed up the time that it'll take me to acquire a sizable portfolio. So yeah, I started doing it on my own, and I was bumping my head left and right. Finally got a mentor, and I think within like 6 months, typically within a year, really, within 6 months, I started getting traction, a lot of traction, and then within a year, I was just like, I went full time and I quit my job, and then just never looked back since.
Right on, man. And you're a young dude. What are you, 30 or 31 years old?
I just turned 31 2 months ago.
Yeah. So this guy's 31 years old. He's super young, and he's doing a lot of big things down in a tough area in Miami. So what kind of brought you, what about the wholesaling kind of really attracted you? Because there's so many different ways that people are investing in real estate now. So what do you really like about wholesaling? And is wholesaling your full business model, or are you doing rentals and fix and flips also?
We have done fix and flips in the past. We still got a couple going on right now, but we're shutting down that whole entire thing. I have a love-hate relationship with fix and flips. Well, really, I have a hate relationship with fix and flips that just keeps sucking me back in.
Oh my God.
I preach to everyone. I do some high-level consulting here and there with guys that reach out or whatever. And I always tell like all the wholesalers, like, do not get into fix and flip. Stick to wholesaling. It's a much better business model. What got me in was, I don't know, man, like it just excited the shit out of me when I learned that I can get into this business. Like there was no barrier to entry. Like the cash requirements to get started were like little to nothing. We were just talking about this. We had an event, this past weekend in Tampa, a 7-figure wholesale event. And one thing that was said multiple times was that the ultimate resourcefulness, the ultimate resource is resourcewulness.
I like that.
So it's just like, it was really like, hey, if I can be resourceful, I can make this work, and I can make way more money than I'm making in my job, plus accelerate the time that it'll take me to build this portfolio. So and to answer your question, we are building a portfolio. We actually started later than I would have liked. But we are building it. And there's some awesome tax advantages to doing that right now, especially with some of the laws that Trump passed when he became president. So it's a very good time to build a portfolio right now. It's an amazing time.
Absolutely. And you know, because you have the wholesale business that's pumping out leads left and right, I mean, you can almost just cherry pick the ones that make the most sense to rent and then wholesale the rest. And
exactly. The only caveat is you just have to make sure your wholesale business is on good standing. It's got healthy cash reserves. It's profitable, right? All those things. So that way you can afford to take cash out of that business and place it somewhere else, you know?
Absolutely, brother. So a couple more questions here, and then we'll flip the interview over the other way. So what did you do? Because you know, you're super young, you got started, and now you do, you know, how many deals are you doing a month? Because you're doing high volume.
I don't know. I mean, well, this year we'll probably close about 110 deals plus or minus for the year. And we have a lot more contracts than that. But the reality is, you know, some of these contracts take a lot longer to close. You know, some can take 30, 90, 100, and, 6 months to close. And on top of that, you also have a fallout rate, right? You have deals that just don't see it through. So we're typically always hovered around 25 to 35% of our deals just never make it through, you know?
So 100 plus deals. So what did you do? What's like the one thing that you can share with people listening now who maybe have a business they're not as high volume as you? What's one thing they could do to start to really scale their business? Yeah, obviously a lot of things, but just on a podcast for podcast sakes.
Yeah, obviously, I think getting a mentor, no doubt, is like the most important thing. Yeah. You know, there's like you said, there's a ton of things, right? There is no one thing that makes you successful. It's a multitude of things that you do consistently apply over time, right? But definitely, I would say the first thing is really having someone to show you the ropes. And it's not like you can't do it without someone to show you the ropes. It's possible, but do you want to work harder or do you want to work smarter?
Yeah, you know? Right. Yeah.
So it's like if someone already has the formula and they can give it to you without you spending, a ton of time on the work and effort that's required to figure it out, just go get it from someone else and apply it. You don't have, you're not reinventing a wheel in the wholesaling business, Yeah,
exactly. Why just rip the pages out from someone else who's successful and just duplicate that. And then at least that gives you a framework. I mean, it's probably 85, 90% similar in every market. So if you could take 90% of what someone's doing that's successful, maybe, there's 10% difference. I mean, I think people are smart enough to realize that. So is that really how you started to scale your business? Is you were doing probably, a couple deals a month. And then when you really wanted to put your foot on the gas, did you start really just kind of modeling other investors? I know you're in CG, so you have some good people you're connected with and really kind of catapulted your success.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Like, so when I had a mentor, my mentor didn't really teach me a lot about business per se. He taught me about real estate. So I learned a ton about real estate. And there was just this desire that I had deep down inside. That's like, I wanted to. I remember my first year in wholesaling. I was doing a ton of personal development. Right, that's another big thing. Right, like this has to be right. Like this is 80 to 90% of the game is here. The mechanics, they're important, but it's not. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So there was a lot of reading going on. I was very into at the time when I started. I was devouring everything that has to do with money and finances, and at that time, because I never learned that. Like, I came from a very middle class family. I didn't have very successful or financially successful people around me. So I was just devouring all these things left and right. I was a sponge, and one of the things that I was learning was when you seeing your goals all the time and having it in your mind all the time. And learning to see opportunities with your mind versus with your eyes. So I always had a sticky notepad on my desk that said, I'm going to have $100,000 in my account by the end of the year, and I would look at that every day, right? It was just constantly just entering my subconscious mind all the time. So I didn't get the 100,000 my first year, but I got the second year.
Yeah.
It definitely works. You can't time these things, but it definitely sets forces into motion. So, that it was between that, that grew my business. Then I found a partner, we were good friends at the time, started a different wholesale business. That synergy and that combination of like combining, combining with someone who compensates for your strengths and weaknesses, where you compensate each other. That also created more rocket fuel to go faster. And then putting myself in environments like CG and other environments where now I'm even exposed to a ton of people who are doing it at a really high level. And it's kind of like CG for me, although I have learned some amazing tactics and strategies in CG that have catapulted our business. The biggest thing for me in CG was really, again, was the mindset thing. It was kind of like I'm seeing all these guys climbing Mount Everest, and I'm like, man, these guys can do it. I can fucking do it.
Right? Exactly.
It was just it was all a mindset piece. That's all it was. Like, I'm like, oh, I mean, if they can hire all these people, I can do that too. So I just started hiring people like quickly. Like, let's just do this fast, you know? And then like the fear kind of goes away in a sense, because like you're already seeing people doing it. So it was like, oh, like he can do it. I can do it too, you know?
Yeah. Get that social proof. I remember the first time I went to like a meeting. It wasn't CG, but it was I started hanging out with people who were doing more deals than me. I'm like, whoa, like you get that. I feel like these guys are doing it. They're, buying multiple properties a month. If they can do it, then I can do it. And then it's almost like, what is that like saying you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And next thing you know, you're like, holy crap, I'm just like them. It's crazy, how it happens like that. So, well, good, man. I wanted to get, some high level stuff about you, your background. And then I know when we were talking the other day, you want to kind of flip the interview over. So I know you had some questions for me. So I'll kind of let you take over from here. Ask me whatever you want to ask, and we'll keep this super open-ended, and we'll provide some value for everyone.
For sure. I think a lot of my questions are going to be mostly on mindset, right? Because
right. The most important.
I think the mindset is everything. Like if you don't have the mind right, everything else you're going to sabotage. So,
really.
I definitely, there's a ton of people I see like through social media or that I know personally or whatever. And you've always wanted to have that like deep conversation with, and just life gets in the way.
Yeah, dude.
So like when you reached out, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, let's make the time, let's do it. And let me really ask a bunch of questions that I wanted to ask you anyways. I'm like, let's just do it on the podcast,
Perfect, dude. I'm pumped.
So we'll start. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, I see that you're a big reader, an avid reader, which I admire. So why are you reading so much, and what is it that's driving you to read so much?
Great question. You probably see all those book reviews on the internet, and you're like, this guy is like a robot. So that's really how I got started. I was never, and this answer is probably going to be all over the place, but I'll kind of keep it, in the middle. So I was never a good student. I was never like an A+ student. I was always interested in things that I cared about, and then everything else I just didn't want anything to do with. So like in school, I was never interested in like the science textbook or the math textbook, because I just knew it would never apply to me. And I never could link reading something to really helping me. This is in school. Right. And then what happened was I was playing hockey, and this is actually tying into mindset. I was like, I had the physical ability, like I could skate well. I was pretty good at, stick handling and shooting. But for some reason, my mind, like I could not control my mind, and I would let my mind hold me back from performing at on an athletic basis. So I figured out, this was like 4 or 5 years ago now. I was like, well, maybe it's my mindset. So maybe I should like find a book or something about mindset. And this is just me like thinking about stuff. And I picked up this book. I'm not kidding. It was called Elite Minds by Stan Beacham. I'm actually getting him on this podcast. So it's funny how it's coming full circle. And I've never read a book like voluntarily before that. And I'm not kidding. My hockey career was over. And I was reading this book. I was actually on a plane going to Tampa, ironically, where you just had that event. And I don't know what it was, dude, but when I was reading that book, something sparked inside of me. And I don't know what it was. And it just got me to realize, like, wow, like the mind is a powerful thing. And I read that book probably like 6 times in like the first 2 months, I'd say. Wow. And it really just changed the way I looked at everything. And I was like, holy shit, like your mind is so important. And it just got me really, like, I guess, motivated to kind of go out and do my own thing. So I think that book was the anchor. And then ever since then, I just realized the value I was getting from these books because I was reading them. And most importantly, I was applying the stuff and it was helping me. And I was seeing the results come from the books. And they've always just been a big resource for me. And it's just given me, it's almost like there's a quote, like, reading is to the mind what exercise is to the body. So like I have to keep my mind sharp, right? Just like I have to keep my body sharp by exercising and eating properly. So for me, at least, being able to use a book as a medium to tap into other people who are way smarter than me because they've documented all these things, whether books or audiobooks, it's just really given me, number one, an advantage, and number two, just total clarity. Because anything in my life, and I don't just read business books, I read personal development books, relationship books, just everything. Like there's all the answers I think are written, right? They're all out there and you just got to go out and find them. So you might as well leverage these books because they're so powerful if you actually do something with them.
For sure.
Hope that was a good answer.
Yeah. I can relate, man. I played baseball up until my senior year in high school. And I also, now that I think back, I never thought of it that way, but I did experience something similar where I can never like get to the top of my class in baseball because it was the mindset piece. Like I'd always get frustrated and I would let my emotions get the best of me. And man, the mindset wasn't there.
No, and my confidence, it was screwing up it was my confidence. Like I knew I could do it, but I didn't have the ability to believe in myself. I don't know what it was. Like no one's perfect, but I knew it was a mental thing. And I remember like the Elite Minds book, I Googled sports psychology books and there's just like a random book that came up. Like it wasn't like a bestseller or anything. And it was actually new. It just came out. And I just read this thing, man. I was like, holy crap, like this is insane. And I was never the dude who read books. So like for me to like read it and actually understand it and be like, wow, like this is crazy. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Compound Effect. And those books, I think the books I read in the beginning really set the right foundation for me. Like, The Compound Effect, just classic book. Rich Dad Poor Dad, about money and finances. And then I think that just set the foundation for me at a very young age. And then ever since then, I just was like, all right, I'm going to just keep reading and learning. I'm going to always be a lifelong learner. I always want to stay curious, right? Because it doesn't matter how successful you get. You can always get better. There's always a next level, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be business. It could just be anything in life.
Right. Yeah, and we call it the plus one effect. There's always a next level to get to.
Exactly.
And I had a similar experience too. Like when I graduated from school, I knew one thing. But when, people would ask me, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Because I was going into the music industry, and it was an industry that there was really no jobs.
Yeah.
And I was just at a point where I'm like, I was living away from home, and we had a little apartment in Orlando, me and my girl at the time, and I was like, I'm like, I really don't care what I do. I just know that I don't want to go back home, and I don't want to be broke. Those were like the two. And so, when I was struggling and stuff, I'm like, I told myself, I'm like, well, I'm like, I don't have money. I'm like, I'm happy. I have a good relationship. I'm healthy, but I don't have money. And I'm like, maybe the doc came in, maybe I should go to the library and read books about money. Perhaps there's something I don't know that if I read will probably give me some insight into why I don't have money. And that's how everything started with the curiosity,
Yeah, it's funny. And it's funny you said it like that because it's so true because like there's that other saying like, when the student's ready, the teacher will come. Right. Like I remember when I got started down the whole like entrepreneuring thing, and I'm sure this has happened to you, you get so excited about it because for you, like for me and for you and for other people, our friends, it's like, oh, this is awesome. I can create my own destiny. And you're trying to share the message to other people who maybe aren't as successful as you. And they're not like that open to it. Some people are like, oh yeah, whatever. But when the individual is like ready for the knowledge, then they're going to get the value from the books. Like you almost can't give it to somebody. Like they have to almost kind of want it originally. And then once they are open to it, they're going to then be very receptive to the message in those books. And I've tried it when I started. I was like telling all my friends, I'm like, you guys are crazy. Like I got this book, like, I'm going to be buying properties and like, they weren't open to it. And now it's like, now they want the books, So it's funny how it all comes around like that.
So here's a peculiar question for you. So this is a book question, but so I'm sure you have this similar problem that I do, right? I probably can't see it, but let me see.
Oh, yeah.
I have all these books on the shelf, right? And every time someone recommends me a book that I feel like can truly help me, I try and just not even think about it. I just buy it. I just get it sent to my house.
I like that.
the problem with that is that I have a stack of books that I'm always like figuring out, okay, which one do I read? So that relates to my question is, as you decide what book to read, how do you figure out, do you have a system to figure out what book you're going to read next? And do you stick to just reading one book at a time? Do you read multiple books? How do you digest all this information?
That is a fantastic question because it is a real life struggle for book readers. So I'll answer your full question in a second. I sound like a politician, like you ask me a question and then I go answer a different question. But I'm a big believer first and foremost in reading the most valuable books to you more than once, because every time you read it, you know, you're going to get a different perception from it. So in terms of reading the next book that someone sends me or recommends to me, I'm like you, I will buy the book or the audio book or whatever, and I'll keep it in my database, whether it's a physical book or in my Audible. And I really look for, with where I'm at right now in my life, what book is going to get me the most value right now. So an example would be, let's say you send me a killer business book that has to do with marketing, all right? And, you know, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let me buy the book. If I'm crushing it in marketing right now and the leads are coming in like hot, like red hot, I'll still read the book, but I probably won't read it right now, because if the issue that I'm going through right now is like, oh my God, like for some reason my relationships are shot, you know, I'm not being a good dude. I'm not, you know, being nice to other people. Like I'm just making this up. I would go look for the relationship book to read to get some nuggets out of right now, because I know currently that's something I need a lot of help with. So I want to try to seek the book right now that's going to help me fix that, to then when that gets fixed, now I can put that book on the shelf for another time and then maybe jump to that marketing book. So I'm not going to decline the book. I'm just going to put it on the shelf for a situation where I really need to bump up my marketing. So it'll always be there. It will get read. But whatever I need value from right now is what I'm going to be reading and listening to. So for me, it's a lot of just mindset stuff right now, just controlling your mind and focusing on things you have control over, staying in the moment. That's very difficult for me to do. I think a lot of type A people, it's very challenging to do that. So really, to answer the question, short version, whatever I need help with right now is what I'm going to be consuming. And then the other books that come in that offer recommendations will get read, but it's going to probably be at a time where I need that book to help me in that moment.
Got it. That's pretty practical.
Yeah, it's pretty straight up.
Do you ever read multiple books at a time, or do you just stick to one?
So I kind of do it a little differently. So like a physical book, I try to read one at a time, and I read pretty fast. A lot of the times because I read the same books over and over again, but I'll always listen to a different audiobook. So I'll have like one physical book I'll read, and then I'll have one audiobook I'll be listening to, and they'll be completely different. But I don't like to have two at once, because then I'm like, because usually what happens is like, I'm going to want to read one book more than the other one. So then I'll neglect the other one. And then I'll like, it just doesn't, for me at least, I don't get a lot of value from that. I can do simultaneous books and audiobooks, but physically reading it or physically, listening, I need one at a time. So that's how I handle that situation.
Got it. Cool. So, another question about books is, do you ever not finish reading a book?
Yes.
And if so, how do you decide that I don't want to read this no more?
Yes. That's a really good question. All these are really good questions, by the way. And I'm not just saying because you're on my show. I'm saying that because it's legit. Like, this is something we'd be saying, like, we had dinner, we'd be having the same conversation. That's why.
Like, I put a lot of thought into these things, because these are things I struggle with too.
Yeah, dude.
I'm not going to get these answers unless I speak to someone that's like an avid reader that knows the struggle.
Yeah. So it all depends on, I want to try to get at least one nugget from a book, okay? So I could read a book cover to cover, and it could take me a couple hours, and I can get one nugget, right? Or I could read the first 3-4 chapters, get 5 nuggets, and then go through the rest of the book and see like, I feel like if I invested the next 2 to 3 hours, I might not get as much value as I've already gotten. So it really has to do with, I skim the books, I look at the chapters and see what's applicable to me. I skim through fast. And then if I've already gotten like 5 or 6 really good ideas and the rest of the book doesn't seem like it's worth me putting the time and energy into, I'll close the book for now and start to apply those ideas into my life. And then I might open the book up again for more ideas. Or if I feel like I've squeezed enough juice out of that book for now, I'll put that one on the shelf. So that's my first thing. How much value can I get out of the book, and how quickly does the value come out? And the second thing is, if I'm reading a book and I'm just not really, if it's not jiving with me that well, maybe I just can't relate to it or whatever, I'll stop where I'm at. I'll fold the page. I'll start to really skim through the book and like look through like the subtitles and the chapters and like really for the highlighted stuff and the underline, like the bolded text or whatever. And if I can't see too much stuff that I'm going to get value from right now, instead of me saying, oh, like I need to finish what I started, which is a good thing to do in life. But when it comes to reading books, like I think sometimes just ditching a book that you're not getting value from is a good use of your time. Because if you're not going to get value from something, why the hell are you going to spend 3 hours wasting your effing time when you're going to do nothing with the damn book? So I'll kick it. I'll kick it if need be. But usually the books I read, I don't normally kick them. I'd say every 15 books I read, maybe 2 or 3 of them I'll junk for the time being. But for the most part, if I'm going to invest my time and energy into reading a book, I'm going to make sure that I get at least one good nugget out of it. And then how do I apply this to? Like, how do I take the nugget, write it down, and then I see how do I structure this into my life? Like, where is this going to make sense? How is this going to improve my life? And how do I be consistent with this thing?
Yeah, I've had do you, you talked about that you take down books fast. I mean, like, yeah. There's books, like I have this one on my desk because I went back to this the other day. I typically don't go back to read books in full. But I do make highlights in books and I do make notes. So I go back to the notes specifically. Like I just something specifically I want to pull out of the book to refresh my mind. I go back to that specific thing again. I don't know. I just don't have the attention span to reread a whole other book again. Like I feel like I get bored.
Yeah,
like this book example, I have this on my desk right now because I was going through some notes about this the other day, and dude, I can't read this book in 2 or 3 hours. You would go through this whole thing in 2 or 3 hours?
2 or 3 hours. I mean, that's good to great. That's a fat book, dude. It's got a lot of content in it. That would probably take me. Well, it depends how much time I have like available. So, like, I'll give you an example. I was on a plane the other day flying to New York, and I was like 4.5 hour flight from San Diego, and I read 75% of a 220-page book so it takes me a couple hours. So I could probably
Have you ever done like a speed reading class?
See, I always tell myself I'm going to take one of those because it's a really good idea. But then I never schedule the time to do it. So I really need to commit to that because I think it'll really help me a lot. I do listen to audiobooks on 2 speed. So I can motor through those things very fast and I can retain it even better because for some reason, I think anyone can do it. It's almost like, you think you can't do it and then you get used to it. And then you go to like me and actually Brad Chandler were talking about this when he was on the show. You do it on 2X and then you go back to 1 and it sounds like slow motion. Then you got to play it back up to 2 and you can understand it.
Yeah, man, I do 1.5. I find 2 for me. It's just like it's too fast. The thing is like when I'm driving, because that's when I typically mostly
exactly.
While I'm driving, I get distracted all the time. I'm like, all right. And if I go too fast, I'm like, I constantly find myself having to pause.
Rewind it.
When I'm at 1 speed, I still sometimes rewind.
Yeah. The hell? So yeah.
We should force ourselves to take the class like right after this podcast. We should just go book it.
There is one. It's this guy, Jim Quick. We should have ourselves an action item. It's a speed reading class because it will really help us. Because I mean, the quicker you can get through books and retain them, I mean, Jesus, the easier it's going to be. So we'll talk about that offline.
Quick's got. I've been looking at Quick's course for some time. I just haven't.
Yeah, I've been browsing on it. I haven't pulled the trigger yet because I'm like, oh, am I going to use it? But if you invest a couple months into speed reading, I'm sure that will, pay lifelong dividends.
So tell me, what are some of your primary philosophies about life?
That's a good question. So before I give you an answer, I'm gonna throw a fat disclaimer out there. I'm 24. I got a lot to learn. So what I think right now about life could certainly change because I'm super young. So I got a lot to learn. So like disclaimer out of the way. Right now, I would say.
Oh, with that being said, the reason I asked these questions is because I think you have a very sound philosophy.
Oh, thank you.
So, regardless of being the age is just a number. At the end of the day, we're all spiritual beings, and you probably may be older spiritually than a lot of people who are 3 times or twice your age in the physical world.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way. So in terms of philosophies. I would say the first one that comes to my mind is this actually comes from a book, Outwitting the Devil. He talks about the concept of not being a drifter. And what he means by that is like, you always want to have something that you're working towards. And it doesn't have to be making a gazillion bucks like a lot of driven entrepreneurs like us, whatever, but it just has to be something that kind of gets you up out of bed, that gets you excited. So having a purpose, basically, that's probably the short version is having a purpose, and making sure that purpose is something that excites you. Obviously, not every day is sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be the up days, the down days, those neutral days where you're just kind of fighting along. But I think always having something you're working towards, regardless of what you're doing. Like if you're a teacher, be the best teacher. If you're a business person, have a successful company that you want, right? And don't follow what everyone else has. Make sure whatever you want is something that you actually want, and you're not just trying to copy your friends because you need to be as successful as them.
Right.
So I think definitely so far it's having direction in your life. And that's really where everything changed with me is I had a lot of drive in hockey. I just couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't figure out how to get that successful. And I was on kind of a deadline because of the age limit, and that's how sports work. So once I started to really set goals and have a structure for like what I wanted to achieve out of life, not only did I start to attract people who were kind of in line with what I wanted to do. And that's just not in business. That's like other people I've met. And just being in line with people who kind of want to go in the same direction. So having a purpose is something I think is very important. Another thing I would say is I'll share with you my 3 core values that I've gotten from the Compound Effect, because that book made me think about what are the core values I want to live my life by, and how do I live every day in line with my values, or at least do my best effort to live in line with my values. And they're freedom, growth, and happiness. Freedom. Let's talk about that. Freedom, and this is something that I've learned. I'm sure you've gotten this too, because I think entrepreneurs, especially once they get a little bit of traction, they kind of they kind of want something, and once they get it, they're like, oh shit, like this is kind of like weird. Like I don't want to sit around all day and do nothing. Like I like spending time with my family and friends and being able to control my own schedule. But if I was going to sit at the beach all day, I would be miserable. Like I always want to be working towards something. So for me, it's like you can't just sit around all day. I mean, it would go nuts. So for me, freedom is like being able to
have the option. It's nice to have the option to be able
to. That's the key right there. You just said it. That's the golden nugget from the call today.
Right, but you don't want to do it. Like, it's just all there is to life. Just sit.
Yeah, just sit and chill and watch the money come in. It's like you want to pull the card out of your pocket if you want to, but you don't have to.
Right.
So let me hit on freedom real quick. So freedom, and this is actually from another damn book. I'm just going to start plugging books. I should be an Amazon affiliate. It's called The Perfect Day Formula by Craig Ballantyne. He talks about structure equals freedom, right? So for me, having a structure to my day within reason creates freedom in my life, because I'm the person who creates the structure, right? If I had to go, there's nothing wrong with having a job. If you have a job and you're listening, that's totally normal, totally fine. For me, I don't like that because I don't want someone else telling me what to do, right? Nothing wrong with if you like doing that. But for me, I want to be able to say, this is what I want to do for the day. And then I want to be able to follow through on that. To me, that's freedom because I created it, right? But I also followed a structure. I was disciplined to make sure I managed my time well all day. And I made sure that what I did all day aligned with where I want to head in life, depending on where I'm at currently. So that's freedom. Second one is growth. A lot of the times growth for me, it's just, especially in business, it's usually getting out of your comfort zone. Right now, a version of growth is I'm starting to really take down bigger properties now and flip them. I'm going against the wholesale thing, but in New York, I mean, the spreads you can make closing is just, it's substantial. And also there's a couple commercial deals I'm in the middle of making offers on, and there's another land deal that I'm, trying to subdivide and sell to a builder. So kind of getting out of my comfort zone in the real estate game. Cause for me, that makes me at least like kind of know that I'm evolving. Right. And at least in business, it's not that I'm scaling my business up to like do more volume. It's how do I do the same amount of deals and really like 5, 10x those profits. So growth. And then also to hit on growth, it's getting out of your comfort zone. Right. And not just business, like, going on more dates or being just doing things that will get you uncomfortable regardless of what the actual thing is. Right. Physical stuff, running, like I'm setting a goal to run 3 miles in a certain time frame. Gets me uncomfortable, but I know I'm growing. So growth is huge for me, and it will always be. And then the third one is happiness. So just being happy. And I think I don't know enough about happiness, and I haven't read as much stuff on it. So like just making sure your mindset and your mental state is somewhat happy. Obviously there's not perfect days, but just trying to have that gratitude, happiness, joy, fulfillment, understanding there's going to be ups and downs that are inevitable, but just trying to stay happy. And I need to do more research on that to like know exactly what I'm trying to go for, but just making sure like, you're happy, like doing what you want to do. You don't want to be miserable all day, like feeling like you're helpless and stuck. So freedom, growth, and happiness, those are my 3 values right now. And I just try to live every day of my life in line with those values. And definitely keeps you on your toes. And I'm grateful that I was able to learn about this at a young age and do this on a daily basis.
That's great. I mean, I think it's awesome that you have like, you know, we have core values in business.
Yeah.
I have core values personally as well, but they're not at the forefront of my mind, like to spit them out exactly how you spit them out. I think if I pull mine up, I would probably tell you, I'm pretty sure, well, I know growth is there and freedom is there.
Yeah.
They're also two of my core values. Something cool that, and you don't need to know, I mean, well, you should study happiness, right? Jim Rohn said, if you want something, study it, right? And that's always been very a true thing for me, that the more I study about the more the more that thing manifests into my life. But Brendon Burchard has a good technique that what he does, and I'm sure you journal, I would imagine, right? So he talks about this in his high performance habits books. But he talks about like using what you can do with your core values, right, on a daily basis, like at night, just checking in, like, you know, did I grow today? You know, did I express freedom today? Was I happy today? And use that as like your barometer to know that you're aligned. Because typically when people start like, you know, getting unhappy or they start feeling like burnout, it's typically not like we're so used to thinking that we have to make these massive changes to like, you know, because we're so far down, but really, you know, it's that millimeter change. And it's just that we've probably just not have missed like a 1 or 2 degrees away from our barometer and drift a little bit far apart. And when you check in with yourself and you start saying, well, you know what, like lately I haven't been growing. You know, and then you start, tomorrow I'm going to grow, and you make that small little change. All right, tomorrow I'm going to, you know, spend 20 minutes reading, or I'm going to go to a seminar or book something so I can look forward to, whatever. Yeah. You make that small change again, you can get someone back into that high state like quick, you know, and it's just a matter of, it's like the alignment is more important than anything else, you know, and that helps you like just constantly have that in your forefront of your mind to be aligned, you know?
Absolutely. I love how you hit on that, because it's so true. When you can, like what you said, when you can like live on a daily basis in line with your values and understand like not every day is going to be sunshine and rainbows, but did you make a little bit of progress today towards freedom? Did you make a little bit of progress towards growth? Were you happy today? Were you grateful? And when you can just stack those days up, you can do crazy stuff. Like it's just unbelievable.
You get compound effects.
It's crazy. Yeah. That's what that whole book is about basically. And it's just, I think doing that, because I'll give you a quick example too. This is something that I don't think I've really talked with people about. But like last year, and this is I'm just going to be super transparent about this. Like last year, I had a really good year. Like I started a couple of years ago, so I struggled hard in the beginning. Last year, 2018, so this is recorded in 2019, I had a freaking really good year, and I didn't really expect it. Like I worked my ass off, and I did a lot of the right things and got good at selling and marketing and all that, and I had a good year, right? And I hit my goals very early. And, you know, and a lot of the goals I set were like just kind of like one-time goals, and they were all business related for the most part. Or if they weren't business related, they were like a personal, like move somewhere. Like I moved to California, kind of like New York better, but I live in California for now. Anyway.
Like New York better?
Oh yeah. I'm in New York right now, dude. I come here once a month for these damn real estate deals. Anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. Right. People living in California, they're like, Jesus. So I moved to California. I hit these goals, whatever, living in La Jolla, like the nicest place in the country. So it seems. And I was straight up like just super unmotivated. Now what? Like, what am I going to do now? I'm going to do these virtual deals and sit on the beach all day. And my life was so out of balance. I could have been a better dude. Like I wasn't great in my relationships. I wasn't like, could have talked to my parents more. I was just kind of a dick, to be honest with you. And all I wanted to do was hit these goals. And I hit them. And I was like, literally like justifying everything. I'm like sitting in my apartment by myself. Don't know anyone out in California. And I'm like, what the hell did you do? Like, why? You wanted to hit these goals. You thought when you moved to California, you hit this certain income goal and you had this deal flow goal and you're buying these houses all over the country. You think I'd be on top of the world, but then I fell into a funk, man. And I was like, why am I upset? Why is this bothering me? And I started to probe myself, and I would study stuff. And I realized that not only did I not set new goals once I hit those goals or before I hit those goals, I didn't set goals that were well-rounded enough. And when I hit these financial goals, which certainly made a lot of things better, I can't say like it sucked. It was awesome financially, but like there's more to life than just making some money, right? As an entrepreneur. And I realized that my relationships were out of whack. It just was a real mess, man. And I said, this 2019, or actually once I got out of this funk after talking to a bunch of people, I was like, I'm going to really fix this, and I'm never going to let this situation happen again, because my perception of money was all effed up, and I fixed it, and I've been consistently fixing it. And now I'm much more, I'm on track to have a way better financial year than last year, but my values are really like fixed, and I have other things in my life that I care about. And it really was an interesting situation. And people would probably think on the outside, like, Jesus, you're 23, you live in La Jolla, but like, it's hard to like, you have to kind of go through that to realize like there's more to life than just doing deals. And I still love doing deals, but I had to fix a lot of other areas in my life. And it was a real interesting time, to say the least. And I'm glad it happened to me, because it happened for me, not to me. And the meaning I took from that was good. So that's something I've been spending a lot of time fixing over the last, 6 months.
I call that dopamine money. When you hit these goals, like it provides dopamine, which feels good, but this, like, the dopamine, it comes, feels good, and then it goes. And then when it goes, it's like if there's nothing else, which would be the good relationships and a relationship with God, or health, or whatever it is that you're that you other want in life, which produces like the other stuff, the oxytocin and stuff, which is more about that. You kind of get in those funks for sure.
Yeah, and they're interesting, because you think once you get there, it's like, it's amazing and it's good, but you're like, okay, like, you have to really just be aware of it, and it's good. I mean, I think people should experience that, because when you get some success, it's cool, but you got to make sure. That's why the whole values thing, like, was where I had to really focus in on, and the growth, the happiness, the freedom, and just my life in line with those.
One thing too, you may want to try experimenting with. I learned this from Cardone. He's an interesting character, to say the least, but there are a lot of things that you can take away from him. And one of the things I took away with him was he's a beast, right? He writes his goals down twice a day, every day. At least that's what he says he does. But when he writes his goals, which I thought was very interesting, and I have done that in the past, and it works, is he says that he writes goals that he can't even fathom that he can accomplish. Like, he writes really, really, really big goals. So it's not something that's going to happen next year, or it's not something that's going to happen in 6 months or whatever. He just writes all the stuff that just flows out of him that he just wants to accomplish. And it just keeps him stretching, like, long term. And so you always have something to aim for, and you're never kind of like without direction. And
I like that.
I thought that was really interesting. And I've tried it in my life too, which kind of helps me, it helps me also like navigate and know, okay, well, this is where I know where I want to be next year, but this is really where I want to get to ultimately.
The end game. Yeah. The ultimate stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I like that, because it's obviously, it's real. So it's something you want to work towards, but it's such a big, what does Jim Collins say? Big, hairy, audacious goal or whatever. Like, it's so freaking big. It's like that will keep you on your horse for a long time. Right. I like that. That's a good analogy. Yeah.
That's something that's going to go away
no.
You're going to be chasing those things for a while.
For a while, yeah. And then when you get there, those are some serious goals. It's like, whoa, holy shit! If I can do this, I can do anything.
Right. And then when you get there, you just fucking write new things.
That's right.
Things that you can't even imagine that you're going to accomplish again.
Exactly. Next thing you know, he's flying around in a jet. That's another thing you brought up that I like the Cardone stuff. My big thing now is like, I'm really aware of taking advice from people that I want to emulate. So like recently I was actually talking about this on another podcast. It was I really study people now who have serious, not only financial success, business success, but they're well-rounded people. An example would be this guy named David Osborne. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's super successful, owns a bunch of Keller Williams franchises, got, huge rental portfolio, $100 million guy, but he lived in a lot. What's up?
Someone just mentioned his name to me this past
week. Yeah, he's legit. And, super lives in line with his values. And I really follow a lot of these guys who are just thinking so big. Like, there's another guy, Paul Morris. These guys are just heavy hitters. And you could just see, I just want to study these guys as much as I can and just rip off the pages that they've already wrote and help that provide me guidance in my journey, you know, and not only in business, like the way their life philosophies are. They're big on trips and bucket list adventures and living with your family, being a good person. And that stuff really resonates with me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing, like being cautious of who you take advice from.
Oh, so yeah.
You become like them. You truly do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Powerful, man. And it's like and it doesn't, like, an example on that would be like, I watched this video one time. This is actually a good like way to, like, an example. So there was a video of this dude. He's like some real estate guy on the internet, a million of them. And he interviewed this guy worth like probably $250 million. Like, so that got my attention. I'm like, let me watch this 12-minute video on 2-speed. Take me 6 minutes. So I watched this thing, and the guy was super wealthy, you know, smart business guy. He was fat. He was out of shape. You could tell he was a little shady, and he was chain smoking cigarettes. Nothing wrong with smoking, right? But, you know, the guy's, you know, he was a financial success, but everything else in his life besides his business success did not align with me. Right. So therefore I'm like, I could probably get some business advice from this guy, but I do not want to be like him when I'm older. Maybe the money part, but his health, his mind's like, I just really was like kind of repelled against that. And I'm like, shit, you know, I want to make sure that I'm taking advice from people who are well-rounded in all areas of their life. Just because you make a bunch of money doesn't mean you're a good person. Like, you could be poor and be a bad person. You could be rich and be a bad person. It doesn't matter, you know?
For sure.
That's powerful stuff.
So, this topic this question will probably catch you off guard, but tell me about your spirituality and what do you know? What can you say that from a spiritual standpoint that you know for sure?
Okay, that's definitely got me a curveball. Like, whoa. Let me think about this for a second. So, in terms of spirituality, I'm more of like I said, at this age at least, I'm more of a believer in like kind of karma. Like, I wouldn't say I'm a Buddhist, no, but I believe in like, you know, if you give good, you get good, right? You get what you put in, sowing and reaping. So, you know, I wouldn't say I'm ultra like religious from like a structure perspective. Like, yeah, I believe in God, and, you know, I grew up Catholic. I don't go to church every week or anything like that. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm more of a believer in like, just do the right thing, be a good person. And I think, you know, if you're a good person and you put out good in the universe, you know, the universe will reciprocate from a, like, I guess, a spiritual perspective. And then that's kind of how I look at least so far. That's kind of my spiritual, I guess, beliefs. And I definitely believe in God and stuff like that. But I'm not like, I'm definitely not an atheist, but I'm not like a hardcore structured religious person. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's at least kind of what I've kind of gotten so far from the whole spirituality thing.
Is there anything spiritual wise that you would say that you know for sure, without a
doubt? So I guess this is spiritual. I'm a big believer in, I guess, the law of attraction. I mean, I guess it's sort of spiritual, but like, dude, there's so many times where like I put out in the universe something I wanted, and obviously I took action and like made an action plan, but it literally came back to me like exactly like what I wanted, like in business, in relationships. Like, I remember, like, I'm still a single dude, but I remember, like, you know, I was like, oh, like, you know, I don't want to, you know, go on dates with people who, you know, have nothing in interest with me. Like, they got to be cool. Like, I want to be friends with them. Like, you know, on top of maybe having a relationship with them. Yeah. So like just putting that out there, and like, I think the law of attraction is legit, man. Like, just in general, like, if you know, have a desire for something and you're specific about it, and you actually have some sort of action plan for it, like, you don't just sit there on your couch and wish for the girl to come or the money to come, and you actually go out and act in alignment with what you want. I think the universe has a way to bring that to you. I don't know if it's some spiritual voodoo thing, but I know it's legit, because I think it's more like, I think it's more of like, for me, I'm a pretty logical person, or I try to be at least. I think when you do that, you just get more clear about what you want, and you almost have these blinders on, and like, you activate your reticular activating system, and then that system starts to find the thing that you want. And it's, I guess, you attract them, but really you're just getting more focused on what you want. And then, you know,
you become a magnet.
Yeah, you become a magnet. Exactly. Because those other people probably want that too, right? Or if it's a business, like, you become more open, like, I never saw something that way. Like, oh, well, you know, and I think you got to get specific on what you want and put it out there. And I think people will attract you or repel, like, to you depending on what you want, right? Like if you want to be a giant business success, like, you're going to attract people who probably want that also. And then the opposite could be true.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that. I was Joe was at my house on Monday planning for the event over the weekend, and I had showed him. We were talking about, like, we were going over some of the things that we wanted to teach at the event, and I was like, "Yo, we have to teach these guys how to do daily huddles in their business."
Yeah.
I'm like, watch this video of this company that runs this daily huddle in 7 minutes. Like, I'm like, there's no reason why, if this company can run it in 7 minutes, they have things like 500, 600, 700 employees.
Oh my God.
I'm like that. Our small little companies of 10 people.
Yeah, right.
Can't run these things in
an hour,
in 10 minutes or less. So I showed it to them, and it was basically they have it on YouTube. It's a cool huddle to watch. They call it the O2E huddle. So O is an octopus, number 2, and then E is an Eric. But it's basically the company from 1-800-JUNK, 1-800 Junk or whatever. And long story short, when we were hanging out over the weekend, he's like, "Man, ever since you told me about that company, 1-800-JUNK, he's like, I see their signs everywhere now." He's like, "I never noticed it before,
Yeah, man. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. The reticular active. It's so funny. Like, I'm glad you shared that example, because it's like, it's crazy when you get aware of something, like you just seems to be out there. And it was out there the whole time, but you never got specific about it. Like, you get a new car, you want a Ferrari, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, I see these Ferraris everywhere. What the hell? It's right. Like, over there, you just weren't thinking about it, I love it, man. These are good questions.
So who do you deeply admire? Or who do you deeply admire? Maybe I'm sure a lot of people always ask, like, what's the most single important book you ever read, or the most important person? But I feel like that's a bad question, because I feel like there's really, like, no one person or one book that's, like, made all the difference. I feel like it's always a combination of things.
Like a collective energy.
So who would you say are definitely, like, one of your top 3 or top 5 influences, or people that you admire in your life?
Yeah. So I'll keep this on, like, a business standpoint, because of these business people that I admire are also very, they're into, like, other things besides just making money. And so the first couple, so there's a book called Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur by Jim Randall. I'm going to just go ahead and say it's the best real estate book I've ever read. Changed my life. Like, just amazing book. Recommend you read it if you haven't. And Jim Randall, I think, is a guy that, and I watch his YouTube video every Sunday night before the week starts to get me fired up and on track with what I want to hit and achieve. So Jim Randall, basically, high level overview. He's a guy who's been, he's a little bit older now, but he's been, in the real estate investing game, commercial game, for a long time. And just his approach to how he makes deals happen, and how he's always evolved as an entrepreneur, because he's also gone into different businesses. He's an attorney, he's had successful startups, and he's very into, like, the whole personal development thing too. And, he's married, he's got kids, he's a very successful guy. And I just think his way of doing business and life really aligns with me, and especially in his writing and his deal making. So Jim Randall is a guy one of my biggest role models. I'll definitely get a face-to-face meeting with him soon, because he's actually in Connecticut, not too far from New York, and I've reached out to him before. Another guy is a guy named Paul Morris. He's a dude, another successful real estate investor, but he's really into the mindset and like your beliefs, what you tell yourself. And he's really into, like, building true wealth. So he's into buying and holding, buying commercial, building big businesses, and then just living in alignment with your values and like having a true definition of wealth. It's not just financial wealth. So Paul Morris is another guy. David Osborne is a guy I really think highly of. Same thing with Paul Morris, very similar. They both own Keller Williams franchises. And then I'd say, like, on a non-business perspective, probably my parents, I'd say. They're definitely, they raised me well, and they taught me well, like, to do the right thing, have integrity. So I would say them too, because they taught me the right thing, like, right from wrong. And they kind of let me always just kind of figure it out myself, like in like a structured way. Like, that, they wouldn't let me do anything I wanted, but they kind of let me kind of choose my own path as I grew up. And they definitely set a very good example for me, just growing up. So those are probably, 2, 4, or 5 people I look up to heavily.
Nice. Yeah, that's important, having being able to choose your own path. I'm looking on my shelf here, because I think I have a book written by by the guy who wrote the Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur, but it's another one.
Is it the skinny book? Is it one of those, the skinny on books?
It's normal. It's a normal book, and it's about market cycles. I think it's called Timing the Real Estate Market. I believe it's called. It's a phenomenal real estate book. It's all a huge commercial picking book. It's pretty mind shifting for sure when you read that book. And I can't seem to see it on my shelf. I don't know if I lent it to somebody and they didn't get back. But yeah, man. And so now with that being said, and what would you say, we've touched on a lot of books, which is great because I'm going to buy some books after our meeting from some of the things that you mentioned. But what would you say are, maybe top 3 or top 5 most influential books that you've read in your life?
Yeah, definitely The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. I think that book doesn't matter what you're going after. That book will keep you on track with what you want to achieve because it has to do with just consistency, habits, momentum, associations. Basically he boils down the keys to success in anything. That book is really powerful. Another book I recommend, and I'll make this, I'm going to make these 3 books personal development books, not real estate books, because people that listen to the show, they're not all in real estate. So I want to be fair to everyone. There's another book. I actually have it here, right here. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And it's a very popular book. A lot of people have heard of it.
I have it on my shelf. Just never had it.
This is a really good book, and it's popular, it's mainstream, but I think it's popular and mainstream for a reason. It really talks about values and really how to live a life that you care about. And it's kind of counterintuitive about a lot of success things that get brought up. So this is another good book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Teaches you about what you want to struggle for, what you care about, how to find the right values. And it really kind of debunks a lot of these success myths that people see. And another one, this is I'm going to give you I'm going to keep it at 3. I don't want to overwhelm people. There's another, I'm just trying to think of off the top of my head. Here's one. Here's this. I just actually read this book. It's an audio book. I don't think it's on physical, but it's called The Art of Exceptional Living by Jim Rohn. Yeah. And it's probably the best personal development material you'll get your hands on. I think a lot of these other personal development people, they get a lot of their stuff. They got their stuff from Jim because, it was like an OG. So The Art of Exceptional Living by Jim Rohn. I mean, if you listen to that thing and take even one idea from it, you can change your life. He covers everything, money and happiness and goals. And it's just The Art of Exceptional Living by Jim Rohn. It's just fantastic audio program. I would say those 3, if you read these books or listen to them and really understand what they're about and apply them in your life, no matter what you're doing, you'll have a little bit more direction, and then you could take that direction and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, I absorbed all the Jim material when I was working at I don't know if you've ever seen, he's got I'm sure a lot of the stuff from The Art of Exceptional Living is on that video. Have you ever seen any of his talks?
Yeah, the audio book is actually it's half of him reading it, and then it's half of him actually giving talks, seminars. It's like a little hybrid.
He's got a ton of videos on YouTube you can watch. And one of them is called How to Have Your Best Year Ever.
I'm writing it.
The stuff on that presentation, I think it's like an hour long. But man, it's gold. It's great stuff.
I'm writing that down. Jim.
A bunch of times.
Oh, look at this. Some action items for me.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I like Jim. I don't know if you know, but Tony Robbins worked for Jim Rohn for many, many years.
Yeah, it was like his mentor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Look at that. And now look at Tony. He's one of the biggest guys in the game. So Darren Hardy talks about Jim Rohn in that book too. I think he's like my mentor, Jim Rohn. So I think Hardy was really.
Yeah, I don't think he was personally mentored by Rohn, but just
his books. He actually talks about it in The Compound Effect. He's like, Jim was one of my mentors, but I met him twice. He listed all his shit. So
I got an audio program from him and Rohn on it. I forgot what it's called. Somewhere here, lying around somewhere. But cool, man.
Yeah, man.
I guess as we wrap up, is there any specific information that that I can give you that will add value to you or to your listeners?
Sure, man. I'm actually really happy you came on today, and we did a little bit of a different podcast, more of just we're having a conversation, and it's not as it's structured, but it's not like time frame wise. What would be your piece of advice? Because you're a young dude, you have a lot of success. I see what you do. You have a great family, and you're very into your health and everything. So I'm big on instead of having like the top 10 secrets to success, like have someone tell me like the one thing that's given them the most traction in general. It doesn't have to be business. So before we get your contact information, if people want to reach out to you, maybe for some help, or just follow you, what would your one piece of advice be to somebody who is either trying to get into this entrepreneur game, or they're in the entrepreneur game and they're not maybe having the success they want to have? And it doesn't have to just be business or life, just the best piece of nugget, the best nugget you give somebody that has been true to you that maybe could be true to others. That's like tactical, sort of tactical.
Sure. I mean, I hate to sound cliche, but I had talked about it earlier in the podcast, but really I think getting a mentor.
Yeah.
I think that's like the most important thing. And I've applied that. I've gotten mentors in not only in real estate, but in different aspects of my life, for health,
I like that.
For spiritual, relationship, all types of things. And it just like, how we talked about, like, the answers can be right in front of your face, but if you're not aware of it, you're just not going to see it.
Yeah.
So the mentor just brings that awareness to the forefront, and lets you know, like, this is it. Like, now, like, there's no now, because a lot of times we lack information or we lack awareness. And, the mentor, the only thing that the mentor can do is bring it to the forefront of your mind, right? Kind of like show you the door. Here's the door you've been searching for so hard to find. Now you have to open it and walk through the door. You still have to do the work, but
exactly.
they can shorten, they can make the shortcut. They can give you the shortcut, and it's up to you to walk the path. I think that's just like, that's Jim Collins talks about the flywheel and good to great, and the flywheel consists of many things, right? It's just not one thing that turns the flywheel. There's the first thing that happens that gets it cranking, and then there's other things that you have to do to keep building that momentum there. And Hardy talks about it. Once that snowball is in avalanche mode, there's nothing that's going to stop it, right? So I truly think that the mentor is like that first step in the flywheel,
No, I agree with you, man. It's funny. I'll give you a quick example and then we'll wrap it up. I remember this is a business example, but I mean, you could have, I remember I was struggling, in the marketing department. Actually, no, this is even, you'll know this one even better. I was spinning my wheels so hard in sales, man. I had no sales system. I was just struggling, man. I had no blueprint to follow. I got hooked up with John Martinez. If you're in this real estate industry, you've probably heard of him. He's a world-class sales trainer. And he just gave me the blueprint to how to be effective at selling. And it completely changed my life, right? And it would have taken me years to figure out how to do all these sales things. But I aligned with a mentor, John. He taught me exactly how to sell. He didn't sell for me, but he taught me how to be successful at it. And that one decision I made to get involved with John and his training changed my life, right? And not only did it open up many, many doors, I think that's how we connected, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The success leaves clues, as Tony Robbins says. And I think that's fantastic advice, Gabe.
Yeah, there's always somebody that's already done. I would almost say exactly what you've done. I mean, maybe you're doing something extremely rare, or someone hasn't done exactly what you want to do, but there are people who've probably done 80 to 90% of exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You could take that and just compress that knowledge. So.
And if you're someone that's doing something that no one has absolutely done, like, that's really, really, really rare.
Yeah, exactly.
For the most part, everything that we're doing, someone has already done.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said earlier, or at least a variation of it. And then you put your spin on it, right? Like, not every real estate market's the same, but most of them are the same, so. Sure. Good stuff, Gabe. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. If people wanted to connect with you, man, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Really Facebook, man. Facebook or Instagram, either one. On Instagram, it's the real Gabriel Garcia. Someone else has my name, so. And then on Facebook, it's just Gabriel Garcia. I'm a guy sitting on like a mountain meditating on a cliff overlooking like the ocean in Italy or whatever. So that's either one of those, best way.
Great. Awesome. And Gabe puts out great content, everyone. So definitely follow Gabe, connect with him. So Gabe, man, thanks so much for coming on. I'm glad we kind of did a counterintuitive show. We kind of flip-flopped the roles here a little bit. And
Sure.
man, I think people are going to really get a lot of value from this episode, and this is going to be one of the more popular ones. So thank you so much for coming on, and let's stay in touch, brother.
For sure, brother.
Awesome.